My parents refused to fund my college but demanded $135,000 for my sister's wedding years later, so I gave them their own words back Reddit stories. They spent my whole childhood calling me practical, while pouring everything into my sister's dreams. When they showed up expecting a blank check, all I saw was the same cage they once tried to lock me into, with a price tag. Hi, I'm Calvin, 26, and the first time I realized I wasn't actually a son in my family, just unpaid labor with a last name, I was 12 years old and watching my dad hand my tip money to my sister because she deserved a treat. That moment wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was instructional. And it set the tone for the next decade. I grew up in Willow Hills, in a house where praise had a single destination, my sister Lydia. She was the prodigy, the miracle child, the walking embodiment of every dream my parents ever had. I got the leftovers, in attention, in resources, in expectations, in everything. My dad, Douglas, ran a cafe and decided early that my value was measured in chores. He had me hauling crates before I hit puberty, cleaning grease traps before I understood what half the appliances did, and fixing things he didn't want to pay professionals for. My mom, Janet, wasn't loud about the favoritism, but she was consistent. Lydia was brilliant. I was steady. Lydia had potential. I was practical. Lydia needed investments. I needed to be realistic. And because this was the air we breathed, I didn't question it. Not really. I just observed. By high school, I'd figured out the family blueprint. Lydia gets the path. I get the duties. So when she got accepted into Ridgeview University, it became a neighborhood holiday. Dad closed the cafe early. Mom called every living relative. Someone even brought a cake. They said it was the moment they'd been saving for since she was born. I believed that, too, that they'd saved for her. But I'd also quietly believed something else. That when my turn came, maybe it would look different. Not a parade, just fairness. I was wrong. Senior year rolled around. I had good grades, a plan, a major picked out. One night after dinner, I finally told them I wanted to apply to universities. Janet laughed. Not meanly, worse. Dismissively. Calvin, sweetheart, college isn't really your lane. You're more hands-on. Dad chimed in immediately. The cafe needs you. Business is tough. Family comes first. We can't have you running off. Then he pulled out an already prepared folder, a 5-year employment contract. Full-time. No school out of town. No exceptions. It wasn't guidance. It wasn't discussion. It was a cage wrapped in "we raised you better than chasing risky ideas." I tried every reasonable compromise. Part-time work. Weekend shifts. Loan agreements. Anything. They shut down every option. Family doesn't take loans. We need commitment. This is your place. They locked the door, then asked me to thank them for it. So the next day, I walked out instead. Not in anger. Not in drama. In clarity. I didn't have support. But I had grandparents, Franklin and Marjorie, who listened without flinching and said, "You want college? Then you're going." And 3 weeks later, they sold land that had been in the family for generations just so I could. That was the day I learned 2 things at once. Love is measured in sacrifice, not speeches. And my parents would never sacrifice anything for me. That's where this story truly begins, not with what they denied me, but with what they tried to take from me years later. When they came asking for $135,000 for my sister's wedding, and I gave them the exact words they once used on me. Family doesn't take loans. When I left Willow Hills for North Crest City, nobody chased me. Dad didn't call. Mom didn't text. Lydia didn't even send a "good luck." It was like removing a puzzle piece they never thought belonged in the picture anyway. Franklin and Marjorie, my grandparents, drove me to the bus station with snacks, a sweater, and a quiet pride my parents had never given me. They never said, "Make us proud." they said. Make it count. College wasn't glamorous. It was budgeting, cheap food, hand-me-down textbooks, and praying your laptop didn't die mid-semester. But it was mine. I worked part-time at a campus cafe, because irony loves me, and studied investment management. While other kids partied, I ran numbers and memorized portfolio models. Not because I was gifted. Because I didn't have a safety net. Failure for me wasn't an event. It was a lifestyle I refused to return to. And every month, when I got a deposit notification from the funds my grandparents had set aside, I treated it like gold someone had mined with their bare hands. After 4 years of grind, honors degree, internships, no missed payments, no calls home for help. And at graduation? 2 people sat in the front row. Not Douglas. Not Janet. Not Lydia. Just Franklin and Marjorie, clapping like I'd rewired the entire stock market. That day, I promised myself 2 things. I'd pay them back, all of it. I'd never again stand in front of people who thought I owed them my potential. Then came reality. The job hunt slapped me sideways. Rejections piled up. Weeks turned into months. I was about a week from accepting a position selling insurance door to door when Harbor Ridge Capital finally gave me a shot. Entry level. Low pay. Boring work. High hours. Perfect. I moved into a 1-bedroom on Cedar Street, a starter neighborhood, which is real estate code for don't ask too many questions about your neighbors. I didn't care. It was mine. My key. My life. And for the first time, I didn't feel like someone else's shadow. Until the night Lydia reached out. Out of nowhere, she sent, "Hey! Long time no see. Want to come to dinner Friday? Mom and Dad will be there." No apology. No acknowledgement of the years of silence. Just an invitation with the same energy as, "We're promoting our new seasonal menu." I told her I'd come. Not because I wanted to reconnect. Because people who ignore you for years rarely reach out without a reason. And I wasn't walking in blind. I was walking in observant, the one skill my childhood made sure I mastered. Lydia lived in one of those freshly built, modern suburban luxury homes, the kind with white walls, staged furniture, and nothing that suggested anyone actually lived there. The moment she opened the door, I knew I'd been right. Her smile wasn't warm. It was prepared. Inside, the atmosphere felt rehearsed. Janet sat upright like she was posing for a church directory photo. Douglas swirled a drink he definitely didn't like but wanted to look important holding. And Lydia's fiancé, Bryce, stood there as if every moment was a networking opportunity. They didn't greet me with hugs. They greeted me with assessment. Dinner followed a familiar rhythm. Tiny insults disguised as conversation. "You're still at that little trading firm, right? Cedar Street? Isn't that transitional housing? At least you're stable. Some people aren't built for high-pressure careers." I didn't bite. Didn't react. Didn't defend. Because the quickest way to lose power with people like this is to show you're affected. Then came dessert, and the real reason I'd been summoned. Lydia exhaled dramatically, like she was breaking difficult news to a patient. "So," she said, folding her hands, "as you know, Bryce and I are getting married." Janet clasped her chest. Douglas nodded solemnly. "The venue and planner expect a certain standard," Lydia continued. "Total wedding cost is around $300,000. She said it like she was announcing the price of gum. "Mom and Dad are covering half," she said. But things got more expensive than planned. Then she leaned in, bright smile, eyes sharp. "So we were hoping you could help. Just $150,000. As a loan." A loan. The word hit me like déjà vu dipped in hypocrisy. Douglas added quickly, "You'll get it back." "Of course." Janet chimed in too. "Family supports each other. Always." I let the silence sit long enough for all 3 of them to get visibly uncomfortable. Then I said, "Interesting. Because when I asked for a loan for college, you told me. I looked directly at my father. Our family doesn't take loans on principle. The room went still. Janet tried first. That was different. It wasn't, I said. Douglas bristled. You need to think of the family's reputation. I did, I said. And that's why the answer is no. Lydia blinked like she hadn't prepared for that possibility. No, she repeated like she'd never heard the word before. No, I said. Calm. Even. Final. Their faces fell in sync, confusion, offense, disbelief, like a row of expensive dominoes collapsing. And in that moment I realized something. This wasn't just about money. This was the first time in my life they didn't have a claim on me. And they had no idea what to do. They didn't leave politely. Parents like mine don't exit a room unless they believe they've won, or unless someone forces them out with facts they can't twist. Douglas stood first, jaw clenched. You're being dramatic, he said. This is a simple request. I gave you a simple answer, I replied. Janet leaned forward, hands trembling just enough to look performative. Calvin, honey, weddings are about family unity. People will judge us if we fall short. Then pick a wedding you can afford, I said. Her mouth opened and closed like she was buffering. Lydia finally snapped. You're being selfish, she hissed. You live in a penthouse. You can spare the money. Ah. There it was. Not the request, the expectation. They didn't think I could help. They thought I should. By default. By duty. By birth order or birthright or birth obligation. But here's what they forgot. I built my life alone. I succeeded alone. I paid for every class, every meal, every night shift, and every step forward, alone. Their sudden interest in family unity only bloomed when they saw dollar signs. I earned what I have, I said quietly. You don't get to spend it. Lydia slammed her hand on the table so hard her engagement ring hit the wood. Oh my God, you're still bitter about high school? Grow up. That made me laugh, one short, clean breath of disbelief. It's not high school, I said. It's every moment before and after. Douglas stood straighter, pulling out the only card he had left, fatherly authority. You're making a mistake, he warned. No, I said. I made a decision. They stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. Then I opened the front door. Good night, I said. We're done here. Lydia stormed past me. Douglas walked out stiffly. Janet paused, hand on the frame. You'll regret this, she whispered. I looked her in the eye. I stopped regretting things the day I left your house. She flinched. Then the three of them vanished down the hallway, footsteps sharp, echoing like an ending I'd waited years for. I closed the door. Locked it. Exhaled. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt weightless. This wasn't revenge. This was release. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in desperation disguised as moral outrage. It started with Janet. Wednesday morning, 8:12 a.m. A text. Honey, can you just send a little help? Just a few thousand. We're short on a bill. No apology. No acknowledgement of what happened. Just a reset. Like a software reboot after a crash. I replied with a single word. No. 10 minutes later. After everything we've done for you? Everything they had done. I almost laughed. Instead, I locked my phone. Next came Douglas. I ran into him at the grocery store Friday afternoon. He stepped right in front of my cart, blocking the aisle like he was the final boss of Produce Section 3. He didn't say hello. He said loudly, loud enough for passing strangers to hear. I raised you, Calvin. A son takes care of his parents when they need him. Oh, he loved an audience. I didn't flinch. I'm not having this conversation here, I said. Then I simply walked past him. Slow. Calm. Not rushing. Just removing myself from a performance I didn't audition for. He stared after me, cheeks red with humiliation, not righteousness. A narcissist hates nothing more than an exit that isn't dramatic. Then Lydia made her move. Saturday evening, my phone buzzed nonstop, 12 texts in a row. You're ruining everything. The venue is demanding payment. Bryce's parents think we're broke. You're embarrassing us. You owe the family. That last one made me stop scrolling. Oh. There it was. The truth they'd never said out loud before. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as capital. I didn't respond. So she escalated. Sunday afternoon. She showed up at my penthouse door. The knock was soft, the polite kind people use when they want something. When I opened the door, Lydia gave me a tight smile. Can we talk? She asked. I didn't invite her in. I just said, say what you need to. She stepped inside anyway. Entitlement has its own gravity, and sat on my couch like she owned it. Cal, she began, in a voice that tried to sound gentle. The wedding is important. Not just for me. For Mom and Dad. For our whole family. For the image, I corrected. She ignored that. If you help even a little, even half, it would save us. You know we'd pay you back. I sat across from her, steady. No. She recoiled like I'd slapped her. You didn't even think about it. I've been thinking about it for 26 years, I said. Her eyes narrowed. You'd rather watch your parents look poor? They created the situation, I said. They can deal with the consequences. You're unbelievable. She spat. You act like you're above everyone. No, I said. I'm just not accessible. Her jaw locked. I stood. She stood. This conversation is over, I said, opening the door. She stormed out, muttering insults under her breath. The second the elevator doors closed behind her, the silence in my penthouse felt different. Not empty. Clean. And then, that night, the funniest text arrived. From Franklin. My grandfather. Your parents called. Wanted us to sell the car you bought me to fund the wedding. We declined. I laughed for the first time in days. They were spiraling. And I was finally steady. When entitled people run out of money, they don't downsize. They hunt. And when they run out of targets, they rewrite history. Within a week, word spread through Willow Hills faster than a gas leak. I didn't follow the gossip. I didn't need to. People delivered it to me. First was Hollis, an old classmate who loved drama more than actual friendships. He messaged me with, Bro, you're like public enemy number 1 in Willow Hills. I rolled my eyes and replied, For what? 5 seconds later, he unloaded screenshots of neighborhood Facebook posts, text group messages, even comments from some extended family. Apparently, the new narrative was, I abandoned my parents in their time of need. I refused to help with a once-in-a-lifetime family event. I became arrogant after moving to the city. I cut contact out of spite from high school. My personal favorite. He's rich now and forgot where he came from. Where I came from. They tried to trap me in a cafe and deny me an education. I didn't forget. I just walked away. Then came the Guild Brigade. 1. The manipulator, Janet. She sent a text dripping with forced affection. Honey, I know you're hurting. Let us help you heal. Come home for dinner. Healing? They treated me like a workhorse for 18 years and suddenly they were running a wellness retreat. I didn't reply. 2. The loudspeaker, Douglas. He left a voicemail. You can't hide forever. One day you'll realize you need your family. I deleted it as soon as he said family in that tone, like it was a chain instead of a bond. 3. The opportunist, Lydia. She sent a long message. Bryce's parents are threatening to downsize the wedding. They think our family can't keep up. Do you understand how humiliating that is? I answered. Not my problem. She fired back. You're heartless. I put my phone down and continued making dinner. 4. The outsider, Kyle, small-town ambassador of unnecessary advice. I ran into him in the parking lot of a hardware store. He approached me like he was auditioning for the role of misguided moral compass. Man, he said, everyone's talking about you. I get it, I do, but you should see their side. They're your parents. You only get one family. I looked at him, deadpan. Nobody told them to be better parents. He blinked, mouth open, brain rebooting. I walked around him and left. 5. The desperation move. 2 days before the wedding, Franklin and Marjorie invited me over. During dinner, Marjorie sighed and said, Your mother called us asking for money. I paused. They're contacting you now? I asked. Franklin nodded, jaw flexing. She wanted us to sell the car you bought me, he said, to contribute to Lydia's celebration. I stared at him, heart dropping. She said it was just sitting there, Marjorie added. Like it was spare change. Franklin set his fork down. I told her if she mentioned it again, I'd hang up. And? I asked. He gave me a flat, satisfied look. I hung up. I sat back in my chair, absorbing that. Janet and Douglas weren't just entitled. They were scavenging. And the wedding was squeezing them dry. Lydia didn't want a marriage. She wanted a spectacle. A $300,000 performance where she was the star, Bryce's parents were the producers, and Douglas and Janet were the desperate background investors. And me? I was supposed to be the bailout fund. Not anymore. For the first time since I left home at 18. Everyone else was feeling the consequences of the system they built. And I was watching it from a safe distance, calm, steady, untouchable. The wedding week was a slow-motion implosion. You could practically hear the stress radiating off Willow Hills. Bryce's parents, who had been smugly parading around town like royalty, suddenly went silent. Douglas and Janet were in full panic mode. And Lydia, oh Lydia, was unraveling like cheap ribbon. I wasn't trying to keep tabs on any of this. People delivered updates to me like I was the local news station. The first crack, the venue. Talia called me during her lunch break. Dude, she said, half laughing, half snickering. You won't believe this. The venue they booked? The one with the lake view and imported marble? They downgraded. I didn't even fake shock. To what? I asked. Maple Ridge Hall. I snorted. The community center? Yes, she said. The same one that hosts bingo night. I pictured Lydia walking into a room full of folding chairs and fluorescent lights and had to bite down a laugh. The second crack, the caterer. My grandfather called this time. Well, he said, your mother is furious. The caterer fell through. I leaned back on my couch. Why? They couldn't pay the deposit. Apparently, the planner moved on to other clients. So what's the backup? I asked. He hesitated. Your father is picking up trays from a bulk grocery store. I choked. Dad is catering Lydia's wedding with frozen appetizers? Looks like it. I covered my mouth to keep from laughing into the phone. The third crack, the dress. Hollis texted me, because of course he did. Bro, big TA. The alterations place refused to release Lydia's wedding dress. Parents didn't pay the remaining balance. I stared at the message. Then I typed. Did she get the dress? Hollis replied. Her friend drove her to pick it up. She tried it on in the parking lot. Tag still attached. I closed my eyes in second-hand embarrassment. The breakdown. The day before the wedding, Lydia showed up at my penthouse. She didn't knock softly this time. She pounded like she was trying to break down the door. When I opened it, she pushed inside and spun around with wild eyes. You don't get it, she snapped. You ruined the wedding. I leaned against the doorframe, calm. I didn't ruin anything, I said. You overspent and assumed I'd fix it. Tears welled instantly. You could have helped. She spat. You could have saved everything. Mom and Dad are devastated. Not my responsibility. Stop saying that, she screamed. Family helps family. I raised a brow. You mean like when I asked for help with college? She froze. And you all told me to stay at the cafe instead, I continued. Was that family helping family? She swallowed, jaw trembling. That was different. No, I said quietly. It was exactly the same. Silence. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Not the backup kid. Not the reliable one. The person she couldn't control anymore. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Do you actually hate us? I shook my head. No. I just stopped letting myself be used. Her face crumpled, not in guilt. In frustration. Because the tool she depended on wasn't working anymore. She walked out without another word. The wedding. I didn't attend. Neither did Franklin or Marjorie. Talia later sent me a brief summary. Half the decorations didn't arrive. The DJ cancelled. They used a Bluetooth speaker from Walmart. Douglas forgot half the grocery store trays in the trunk. Bryce's mother cried at the reception, not in a good way. Lydia snapped at 3 bridesmaids. The air conditioner broke. The lights flickered. The cake was lopsided. The photographer quit mid-event. The whole thing ended early. Perfect metaphor for a family built on entitlement. 2 days later, Janet texted me. Miss you. Come by sometime. Like nothing happened. Like they hadn't tried to drain me for $135,000. Like I hadn't watched them throw away every opportunity to change. I looked at the message. Then I locked my phone. No reply. No argument. No reopening that door. Some bridges don't burn. Some bridges are quietly closed, boarded up, and replaced with a long, peaceful road in the opposite direction. I chose that road. And I'm not walking back. The funny thing about cutting people off, or even just stepping out of their orbit, is that they don't notice the distance until they need something again. And in my family, needing something was basically their primary love language. 3 weeks after the wedding disaster, Willow Hills had gone quiet. Too quiet. No calls. No texts. No passive-aggressive emails. No guiltgrams posted by Janet. No inspirational quotes misapplied to my existence. Silence. Which meant only one thing. They were recalibrating. People like my parents don't apologize. They reposition. The first sign of the new strategy. I was in my office at Maxwell when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hey Calvin, long time. You free for coffee? Bryce. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds before laughing. Of course. Of course Lydia had deployed her fiancé like a foot soldier. Her first attempt at friendliness had failed. Her second attempt, guilt, had failed. Now we were on priority 3, man-to-man solidarity. I typed back. Busy. He replied instantly. Totally get it. We just wanted to clear the air. My parents feel awful about the tension. Thought maybe we could talk things out. Not. Your parents. Not. Lydia. Not. We made a mess. My parents. Interesting. Someone was rewriting the script again. I didn't respond. My silence was the conversation. The second sign. That weekend I went to the farmer's market with Franklin and Marjorie. Marjorie had a thing for fresh peaches, and Franklin had a thing for pretending he didn't love fresh peaches. While we browsed, Franklin tilted his head toward the distance. Don't look now, he muttered. But the parades arrived. I glanced over my shoulder. There they were. Janet. Douglas. Lydia. Moving through the market like a summit delegation. I sighed. Let's get this over with. They approached with the synchronized smiles of people rehearsing their lines in the car. Janet hugged the air near me, not touching, but close enough to pretend she had. Calvin. We didn't know you would be here. Translated, We definitely knew you'd be here. Douglas gave his stiff dad nod. Son. Lydia gave a tight smile like she was afraid her face might crack if she tried sincerity. We were actually hoping to run into you, she said. Of course they were. Franklin crossed his arms, not hostile, just observant. Marjorie stepped slightly closer to me. Reinforcement. Janet clasped her hands in front of her chest. We just wanted to reconnect. Douglas added quickly. It's time to move past old misunderstandings. Old misunderstandings? That was their phrasing for dismissing my education, trying to trap me in the cafe, pretending my achievements were theirs, rewriting my college story, demanding $135,000, shaming me publicly when I refused, blaming me for their financial mess. In old misunderstanding, I didn't react. Douglas cleared his throat. We've been doing a lot of reflecting, he said, and we want to earn back your trust. That sentence was so rehearsed I could practically hear the echoes of their living room practice session. I kept my tone flat. How? They looked thrown. Janet blinked. How what? How do you plan to earn it? Lydia opened her mouth, then closed it again. Douglas rubbed the back of his neck. Well, by being family, he said, voice cracking just enough to pass for emotion. That's not an action, I said. That's a label. Silence. Real silence. Franklin watched them like he was grading an exam he already knew the outcome of. Finally, Lydia tried again. We want to start fresh, she said. Really? No expectations. Just rebuilding. That might have worked years ago. It didn't now. I looked at all three of them. I appreciate the sentiment, I said calmly. But you don't get access just because you want it. Trust takes more than showing up when you're uncomfortable. Their expressions tightened. They weren't used to being the ones evaluated. Douglas exhaled through his nose, the same way he did when I was a kid and didn't give him the answer he wanted. So you're what? He asked. Punishing us? No, I said. I'm protecting myself. Janet swallowed. So what now? No, I said. You let the distance be what it needs to be. If you want something real, it has to come from consistency, not crisis. They didn't know what to do with that. So they nodded awkwardly, muttered a few final polite phrases, and walked away. Franklin waited until they were out of earshot. Well, he said, that went better than expected. Marjorie smiled gently. It's the first time they've walked away without taking anything. And that was the truth. They had asked for nothing. That alone was a shift. Small. Unstable. But real. Later that night, I got a message from Lydia. Just one sentence. I heard you today. I'm trying. No demands. No denial. No manipulation. Just that. I didn't respond. Not out of spite. Out of boundaries. Sometimes silence isn't avoidance. Sometimes silence is caution. Because rebuilding isn't a switch you flip. It's a road you walk. And we had barely taken a single step. 2 weeks passed, quiet ones. Not the uncomfortable silence from before, where I knew they were plotting their next family obligation speech. This silence was still. Heavy, yes. Uneasy, definitely. But not manipulative. It was the kind of silence people keep when they're afraid of breaking something fragile. Still, I didn't trust it yet. My family had a history of going calm before asking for something huge. I didn't let the quiet fool me. Then came the unexpected phone call. A Tuesday night. 8:47 p.m. I was in my kitchen prepping meals for the week, a habit Maxwell had drilled into me, when my phone buzzed. Lydia. I debated ignoring it. But something about the timing felt different. I answered. Her voice came through small, like it was wrapped in soft paper. Cal? Just that. No edge. No attitude. Yeah. Can we talk? I promise, It's not about money. That line alone was suspicious. People only lead with that when money used to be the topic. Still, I said, go ahead. She exhaled shakily. It's about Mom. I straightened a little. What about her? She's embarrassed, she said quietly. I know you don't owe her anything. Or me. But she's been acting like nothing happened because she doesn't know how to apologize without sounding weak. I blinked. Weak? Janet? The woman whose pride could power a small nation. Lydia kept talking. She was raised to believe apologies mean losing status. They weren't allowed in her house growing up. You either pretended everything was fine or you fought. She paused. And since she can't fight with you anymore, she's pretending. I leaned on the counter. This was new. Not an excuse. A context. And Dad? I asked. He knows he messed up, she said. But he's too stubborn to say it out loud. I gave a short, humorless laugh. No shock there. But, Lydia went on, they're different. A little. They're trying. Not the right way, not fast enough, not cleanly, but they're thinking instead of demanding. I finished. Yeah. Silence stretched between us. Finally, she said, I know we don't deserve it immediately. And I know you don't trust us. But I just wanted you to know you're not talking into a void. Things landed. I ran a hand through my hair. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a fix. But it felt like the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. Okay, I said. Thank you for telling me. She hesitated. And Cal? Yeah? I meant what I said. I'm trying. And the call ended. What I didn't expect next. 2 days later, my firm hosted a networking gala. Not a fancy tuxedo event, just upscale enough for suits and expensive wine. I wasn't great at these, but they were necessary. Around 9 p.m., I stepped outside for air between conversations. That's when I saw Douglas. Standing near the fountain. Hands in his pockets. Looking wildly out of place in a suit I'd never seen before. He turned when he heard me. Cal. I approached cautiously. Dad? What are you doing here? I called your assistant, he said. Told her it was family business. I blinked. My assistant let you through security? He shrugged. Lady at the desk likes me. What can I say? Great. My father had somehow charm-hacked corporate reception. What's going on? I asked. He inhaled, deep and steady. Then he said something I had truly never expected to hear. I was wrong. Just that. 2 words. But in Douglas's language, a man who'd rather swallow nails than admit fault, it was an earthquake. I didn't speak. Didn't rescue him. Didn't soften it. I let him continue. I didn't treat you right growing up, he said slowly. I pushed you into the cafe like it was your entire future. I didn't see what you were trying to build. His voice cracked. And when you succeeded, I wasn't proud. I was jealous. That hit harder than it should have. Jealous. Not dismissive. Not oblivious. Jealous. He wiped his eyes roughly, the same way he used to wipe flour off his hands at the cafe. I thought if you left, you'd forget about us. And instead of supporting you, I tried to pull you back. That wasn't parenting. That was insecurity pretending to be authority. I stared at him. My father, the man who once belittled my goals because they didn't fit his picture, was saying this? Out loud? I can't fix the past, he said finally. But I don't want to lose my son because I was too proud to admit I wasn't the father you needed. He took a shaky breath. I want to try. If you'll let me. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, this wasn't a clean moment. Not a movie scene. Real life never ties bows so neatly. But I knew something. This was genuine. This was earned. This was the first real step he had ever taken toward me instead of away from me. So I said the only thing that made sense. Trying is a start. He nodded. Not relieved. Not fixed. Just accepting. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough for now. A week after that conversation outside the gala, I found myself standing in front of the little cafe I once thought would be my whole future. Same faded awning. Same squeaky door. Same smell of roasted beans and old wood. But something in me wasn't the same. I walked inside. Douglas was wiping down a counter. He didn't flinch, didn't put on a smile, didn't launch into a monologue. He just nodded once. Cal. Dad. No tension. No performance. Just two people finally speaking without the weight of expectations. He poured 2 coffees without asking. Black for him. Black for me. Funny how even after everything, some things remained consistent. We sat. And he said, "You know, if you had stayed, this place would have held you back." That alone might have been the closest thing he'd ever say to "I should have let you leave." He added, "You deserved more than what I wanted to give you." And for once, I didn't feel like correcting him. Because I already knew. Deep in my chest, I'd always known. What surprised me wasn't his admission. It was how little anger I felt in response. Not because I forgave him fully, but because I'd finally outgrown the version of me that waited for their validation. When I left the cafe that day, I didn't feel closure. I felt clarity. Real closure doesn't come from apologies. It comes from understanding who people are, and deciding who you want to be despite them. Later that evening, Lydia texted. A short message. "Thank you for giving him a chance." Followed by, "I'm working on myself too. Slow, but trying." I believed her. Not completely. Not blindly. But enough to keep the door cracked instead of locked. Boundaries intact. Expectations realistic. Communication optional. Peaceful. A month later, I invited Franklin and Marjorie to my penthouse for dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and wine. About halfway through the meal, Franklin tapped his glass. "Your grandmother and I," he said, "have decided something." I braced myself, smiling. "What's that?" "You've paid us back in full." I blinked. "I haven't." "You have," he said firmly. "Not in dollars. In what you made of yourself. In how you treat us. In the life you built." Marjorie placed her hand over mine. "You became everything we hoped you would, without anyone clearing the path for you. You honored our investment 100 times over." I swallowed hard. It was the exact opposite of everything my parents ever made me feel growing up. And it meant more than money ever could. Then came the letter. A few days later, a small envelope showed up in my mailbox. Handwritten. From Janet. My stomach tightened as I opened it, expecting guilt or manipulation. Instead, it said, "I don't know how to say sorry the right way. I wasn't raised to. But I want to learn. Not for the wedding. Not for money. For you." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even polished. But it was the first honest thing she'd written to me in my entire life. I folded it quietly and placed it in a drawer, not in a frame, not in the trash. A middle ground. A beginning. Final reflection. I didn't give them $135,000. I didn't give them the version of myself they wanted. I didn't go back to being the backup kid, the reliable one, the tool they depended on. But I gave them something better. A chance to change their own story, without me paying for it. Because the truth is, some families need distance to grow. Some apologies arrive late but genuine. Some boundaries rebuild relationships instead of breaking them. And some lives, like mine, only start once you stop waiting for the people who held you back to suddenly pull you forward. If you grew up as the backup kid, you'll understand this more than anyone. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your family is prove you can thrive without them. And let them meet you at the version of you they never believed you could become.